Good evening. Welcome to RFD-TV Live. I'm News Director Mark Oppold. Tonight it's SFPLive, and we learn the importance of using AVAIL Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer from SFP with your starter fertilizer program, maximizing your fertilizer investment. That's what it's all about each and every year. Growers are finalizing their plans for 2011, and the folks at SFP are here to share updated information as you make those plans. Let's meet the panel who's joined us in studio tonight. As always, we welcome back the President and CEO of SFP, Dr. Larry Sanders. Dr. Larry, good to see you again.
Good to be here
Always
with you
great
tonight.
to see you. And for the folks, before we get into the topic of the evening, many new viewers around the country picking up RFD TV all the time, and maybe they're seeing Larry Sanders for the first time and learning about SFP. But let's hear about your background before we get into the products themselves.
Well, you know, Mark, I've worked for about 15 years with the Potash Phosphate Institute doing research on phosphorus around the world. And maybe only 10% of that research turned out positive because phosphorus, when you put it in the soil, is fixed. And so the farmer just doesn't get the returns that he's looking for on his phosphorus fertilizer. And that's why we invented AVAIL Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer.
And it's been a great year. 2010 was a great year for SFP and for our farmer ranchers out there. And I know you're looking forward to 2011 as well.
Well, absolutely. You know, every year we get so many farmers that contact us and tell us how successful that their fertilizer programs have been using the AVAIL and the Nutrisphere for nitrogen. So we're really encouraged by that, and that's what our company's all about, is making sure that farmers' fertilizer programs are used efficiently so that they can maximize their profits from the crops that they grow with that fertilizer. And also there's an environmental consequence too. We lessen that footprint of fertilizers in the environment.
Yeah, very, very important. Absolutely. Good to see you again and looking forward to that new information. Next, Dave Schwartz is the SFP National Products Manager. Dave, good to see you again as well.
Mark, it's a pleasure to be back.
And again, as like Larry, I know you're looking forward to. There's been a lot of traveling here through the season, but ready for 2011.
Yes, we've been hitting that farm show circuit real hard here for the last several months, and we are just extremely excited about the potential for 2011, of course, with the all-time record high commodity prices. It doesn't matter, pick your one, it's good right now. And what a time to be involved in production agriculture. And our sales force has been out there talking every day and night on meetings and getting the excitement. We're really feeling excited about what the potential for this year brings.
Absolutely. And for the viewers who may be watching Dave for the first time, your background, grew up in Iowa.
Yes, I grew up on a farm in west central Iowa. I've worked in the state of Iowa pretty much my whole career in all aspects of agriculture, even do a little farming. I'm a weekend warrior farmer.
Great.
And been in retail, wholesale, basic manufacturing business my whole career, and been at SFP for 5 years. And this has been one exciting run here working with Dr. Sanders.
Absolutely. Good to see you again, Dave. We have a third member of our panel. He is going to join us later in the program. He's Darren Blank, Specialty Products Manager with the Andersons. Darren spends a lot of time talking about our topic for this evening, the benefits of a starter fertilizer, and he will be here a bit later. And as always, viewers, we will open the telephone lines later in the program and invite you to become part of the program, asking questions for Dr. Larry or for Dave or Darren a bit later as well. Larry, let's start with you, and again for the introduction for people here to learn about the products, but a little background on SFP. You kind of touched on that in your introduction, but maybe a little bit more about SFP, and then of course AVAIL, our real focus tonight.
Well, SFP started in 1998 as a research and development company. And our main objective was to increase the fertilizer use efficiency of phosphorus to start off with, and then we moved to nitrogen. But with AVAIL Fertilizer Enhancer, it is an amazing product, because why would you go out and spend 75 cents a pound, which is what phosphorus costs today, and then lose 75 to 95% of that product due to soil fixation? I mean, it's an amazing loss that farmers face every year that they go out and apply phosphorus fertilizers. I mean, you wouldn't go out and buy a seed corn hybrid that only germinated 25 to 5% of the time.
Certainly.
So why would you do the same thing with your phosphorus? And AVAIL overcomes that fixation problem, gives you the value that you've been looking for from that phosphate, increases the potential yield that you're looking for, and gives the farmer a better bottom line with that fertilizer.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more maybe specifically about the AVAIL technology, if you would.
Well, the AVAIL technology is pretty simple. I mean, we have a polymer, and that polymer, what it does, it has a negative charge on it. Phosphorus has a negative charge. When you put phosphorus in the soil, that negative charge attracts iron and calcium, magnesium, and what they do is they coalesce and they precipitate out, so you don't get that phosphorus in the plant. Well, with the polymer in the fertilizer or on the fertilizer, what happens is the polymer now attracts that calcium, magnesium, iron, or aluminum so that the phosphorus can remain free and available in solution. Now the plant gets that phosphorus. You see the kind of growth that you should see from phosphorus, and you see the kind of yields that you should see from phosphorus.
And we mentioned and promised to the viewers we'd have some new research information to share with them. As always, new research coming in, and so it is. You and Dave have some exciting and positive results with AVAIL to share.
Absolutely. Some great data that farmers can use, and they've seen some of these same things out in their fields, and they'll be able to relate to those things.
All right, let's take a look. I guess we're going to Iowa first, Dave. Is that right?
No better place to start than at home for me. We're going to start out at a trial that Monsanto actually put out and we want to thank Farmers Feed and Grain at Riceville, Iowa, and the United Suppliers rep Mike Sonderman was in charge of getting this data back to us. And an independent trial, starter fertilizer, we're looking at just 5 gallons of 10-34-0 with and without AVAIL. And as you can see, we've got a very nice yield response here, over 15 bushel to the acre. You're looking at a $5 or less than $5, about $4.75 an acre investment in the AVAIL in 5 gallons of starter, Mark, and to get a return of 15 bushels to the acre. Now, our database for the last 4 years on starter fertilizer has been an average of about 7 bushel per acre. Now, this one obviously shows a little more than that. We see them anywhere from 4 bushels all the way up to 20 bushels in some cases. But you can figure our average over our huge database has been about 7. And you take it times the price of corn today.
I was going to say, yeah.
Folks, it's less than a bushel right now to invest in AVAIL on 5 gallons of starter. So what are you risking for what you can gain? The opportunities that this thing gives you as a grower is pretty incredible.
Exactly. And the economics speak to that as well, which you have already. We hope go to Missouri and similar type results there.
Yeah, it doesn't matter where we go. That's what's beautiful about it. Our motto is any crop, any soil, any climate. And we look at Missouri. There's other reasons and other benefits that this product does provide. And, you know, everybody has a different weather scenario every year, Mark. And here in Missouri this year, I just talked to the grower tonight. His name's Tim Lance. And he farms near Barnard, Missouri, and that's up in northwest Missouri.
Right.
And he works with Davis Fertilizer, Floyd Johnson there, a longtime AVAIL seller for us there in Graham, Missouri. And he put this product out in his 624-6 starter fertilizer. And what he witnessed, as he told me tonight, as running the combine, he had a bunch of high wind go through his area. And what he saw was he took stand counts, and he had an average of 19% better stand in the plot where the AVAIL was treated on the starter fertilizer. Again, he's only looking at 5 gallons of starter treated with the AVAIL, a $4.75 investment, had 19% better stand, and he ended up getting about 9 bushel more crop yield.
And you know, Dave, that's at 31,000 plants per acre, and a lot of farmers are going to 40, 42,000 now, so there's more competition between those plants. So having that phosphorus available throughout the growing season is hugely important so that they can get the yields they're looking for.
You know, Larry, we had a lot of calls this year, farmers that had green snap. You know, that's not an uncommon thing. And one thing we get a lot of reports back from people that are using the AVAIL chemistry in their starter fertilizers, even on their broadcast map as well. But they're getting a bigger, healthier plant. You know, a better root system and a bigger diameter stalk. When you do get these high wind situations, really they see it. They can see it right to the line where they have it on, where they don't. And you know, that's money in the bank for a very small investment for what type of adverse weather can do to you overnight.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the population continues, and we may have time later in the program to touch on this, Larry. You brought up something earlier today in our meetings about everybody wants to get in the field earlier as well. That soil might be cool, might be wet, and this plays right into the strike zone, if you will, of AVAIL and what it can do.
Absolutely, Mark. Cold, wet soils are not supplying the nutrients that that plant needs. And secondly, those root systems, they're not growing. They're sitting there in 55 or less temperature, and they don't want to go very far. So they can't contact the fertilizer that they need to contact. So you need to have available nutrients right there at the root zone so that those roots can take it up and continue to grow. If they lose 2 weeks just sitting there, that's a huge part of the growing season. The ambient air may be 70 degrees, but those plants are turning purple, they're turning all different colors, and they're just sitting there.
Yeah. Dave, you've had a slide that was interesting for me, and I want you to show it here now as it relates to the fertilizer study in Michigan.
Yes, and you know, Michigan, cold soils.
Talk about cold and damp soil.
But you know, they're going to be planting corn in Mississippi next week, and some of them may be planting already. Do you suppose the soils are a little cool down there as well? It's the same way, no matter what part of the country, when you're planting corn, everybody wants to get it in as early as possible. You're dealing with cold soils. The phosphorus availability on a cold soil is very poor. And having some starter fertilizer, and I know a lot of you growers out there fight the idea of wanting to use starter fertilizer, but you know, I've had the opportunity through this job here to meet many of the leading corn growers across the country. And you know, every one of these growers that's winning these corn yield contests, they use starter fertilizer. And if you've got a 32-row planter, I realize that this may slow you down a little bit, but boy, couldn't this make you some money? Putting a starter kit on with just putting in as little as 3 to 5 gallons of row starter as a pop-up, and you'll hear more about that from Darren here when we get him on, is really adding that AVAIL to that little bit of fertilizer. We're seeing, you know, on the average of 4 to 12 bushel yield jump for a very little small investment. The only thing you got to have is some patience to be able to slow down a little bit and run that starter. Now this particular slide that we were just showing.
Yeah, you talk about the bushels per acre, here's where it is.
If we can go back to the one before. Yeah, look at the growing point. This is starter with AVAIL. Growing point is a very good indication of that plant's ability to grow and how healthy it is out of the gate. It emerged faster. And it emerged faster, and what it's going to do is mature faster too, Mark. And what we see is usually 5 to 7 days, this AVAIL-treated corn will tassel earlier than the untreated. So that has a lot to do with speeding up maturity. And think about it in this way: cold soils, that plant forms that ear size at V6. That's when that corn plant's only about 8 to 10 inches tall, and that's when it's got to have the good health feeling. It's got to have everything working for it. It's going to set the number of rows of kernels and the length of that ear. And that's where you want that phosphorus load high in that plant.
Now
look at the difference in the diameter of those stalks too, Dave. And you're talking about preventing green snap. We've got a bigger, massive diameter on that AVAIL side than we do on the just starter side. So you're gonna produce a bigger stalk, a healthier stalk.
And up to wind. That wind in northern Missouri you talked about, Dave, there's a good example. I want to go to this slide here, the next one here, because you talk about the yield per acre in the jump, and both of you had some great points here. Dave, you may start, but I want Larry to also
Well, I'll go back to what I was just saying. You know, that amount of rows of kernels and the length of that ear is determined at V6, very early in that plant's life. Once that determination is made, there's not much you can do after that other than weather-related that is going to change that. So you've got to have the proper nutrition up at that point. That's early in that plant's life. Up to 75% of its phosphorus needs are utilized up by V6. Now, Larry, you've got an interesting comment to make.
Boy.
Well, I used to work with farmers a lot, and what I would always tell them is 80% of that cob, the corn on that cob, belongs to you. So if you look at that starter on the right-hand side, you can see if you take 80% of it, you don't have much left for your profits, because the rest of that 80% belongs to the bank. Whereas if you look at the starter with AVAIL on the left-hand side, you can see it's filled all the way to the tip. So you're going to get your profits on that side. You're going to get less profits on the right-hand side. Farmers need to remember, if you can fill that cob out, that you're going to get more and more profits in your pockets, because the bank, they've got their hand out before you even plant. So.
Well, in high yield corn too, as we talk to growers that are going up to 35 to 40,000 population, their whole goal is to get a corn plant with the ear on it that has just a little bit of that tip back. They know that they're maximizing the potential of that population. If it's filled clear to the end, there's more there. There's more goodie to be gained. And we hear a lot of that from our guys that use starter fertilizer in high yield situations.
Well, we're going to hear some from producers here right now. It's always good to hear from other producers about results that they're getting with AVAIL. I know you love to hear those stories, both Larry, you and Dave. We have a video to share with you, and we're going to hear their comments right now.
We did about 700 acres of trials last year using AVAIL, 8 different varieties, and all but one of the varieties showed a bare minimum of 7 bushel the acre and as much as 15 bushel the acre gains over the non-treated. We put it in with our starter. We run 5 to 7 gallons depending on the farm and depending on the fertility. Run 5 to 7 gallons of starter, 1034 per acre, and add the AVAIL in with that. Been a very good product. I mean, it was very cost effective last year. All year long we could see differences. Right to the row on some of the farms, corn would be deeper, darker, greener. Corn would, I mean, it would be, some cases it was 6 inches taller. I mean, throughout the year you could drive by 60 mile an hour in a pickup and see right to the row where we'd use the AVAIL. It worked very good for us. We're going to use it in more trials this year, and virtually the majority of our acres, we're only going to leave untreated checks. It was that cost effective for us and helped. I mean, you talked about getting 15 bushel the acre. That makes a $5 investment well worth it in a hurry. A lot of the growers in our area are looking to do better by their farm, make more money, and if anybody was to ask me about it, I would definitely recommend it. And when you talk about positive gains, I mean, anything you can do to make more money makes it any product worth using, and AVAIL certainly did that for us last year, and we plan on using it on quite a bit more this following year. We've seen as much as 1.5 points drier on some of the corn. For the most part, it was always at least 0.2 drier and as much as 1.5 points drier. But on every trial, including the one that didn't actually yield better, it was drier. And in a year like last year, when we harvested, the majority of the corn that we harvested last year was 24%. I mean, you take another point off of that, that makes a big difference. You're saving money in LP, and you're increasing your capacity, able to dry more in a day. I mean, every little bit helps anymore. Inbreds are a very susceptible plant. I mean, they have no tolerance for any disease, no tolerance for any insects, and the AVAIL seemed to make that plant healthier, stronger earlier, and got it up, got it growing, and in the end got better yield results out of it, therefore increasing our bottom line and helping out our operation to make more money.
I've used AVAIL for about, I think this is my 4th season. I was one of the first growers in this valley to use AVAIL, and AVAIL has really improved my crops and my different soil types. We have all types of soil in the valley. Everyone thinks we have just a straight sandy loam soil. That's not true. We have calcium soils, we have heavy soils, we have sandy soils, which composed makes a good farm, but then you have different soil types, and so your crops have a tendency to have better areas than other areas. But with the AVAIL, what that fertilizer has done for us is it's caused the phosphates not to be tied up in those soils, and they've been more available to the corn, and you can see the corn by the level of the corn's more level all the way through the field. In the spring of the year, the biggest advantage we saw when we first started using AVAIL was when you plant the corn, of course the end of April, middle of May, you always get a cold spell. The corn would come up, get about 1 inch too tall, and then just go purple on you. Since we've used the AVAIL, that purpling has disappeared. You'll have very little purpling in your corn crop. It'll stay green, and it'll continue to grow, and doesn't look like it has that stun effect. And of course, I think that translates all the way through the summer. And because of the AVAIL, it makes it available to the plant, then our end product, our corn, is better, and our yields have picked up.
We've done a fair amount of starter fertilizer studies at the research farm. I think growers have asked us to do that in the past because it used to be a fairly popular program, but now I really see growers using less starter fertilizer, and my results weren't that consistent. I could get that corn to green up with rates of starter fertilizer. I could get it to look healthier, but at the end of the season, I really didn't see a yield difference. Maybe some moisture differences. I could maybe get drier corn, but I just didn't think that starter program was paying for itself as much as it should. So we've started adding in AVAIL to our liquid fertilizer testing, and I think due to our higher phosphate readings, we're getting a better response from our starter just because of the AVAIL, adding that in. in our in-furrow situations. We use liquid AVAIL, liquid starter, and seen a pretty good response to that. So I feel much more confident in our starter programs having that AVAIL in, and I've got very high phosphate readings on the farm. Maybe that's why I'm seeing a better response to the AVAIL. But overall, our starter fertilizer programs are working now, whereas in the last 2 or 3 years, they weren't. So 6 bushel advantages by adding the AVAIL, whereas 2 years ago with the starter alone, maybe a bushel. I think that says a lot about the product. I think it's working.
Farmer testimonies from around the country about AVAIL from SFP. I'm Mark Oppold. You're watching RFD-TV Live. We're going to take our first break, and when we come back, we'll introduce you to our guest of the evening, Darren Blank from the Andersons, and also add to our conversation about starter fertilizer. He spends a lot of time talking about that. He'll talk with you as we continue on RFD-TV. We are rural America's most important network. Stay with us. And welcome back to RFD-TV Live. I'm Mark Oppold with our friends from SFP as we focus on starter fertilizer and AVAIL on our program this evening. Our telephone number lines are open now. Let's give that to you first of all. We'd love to have you join us as we continue our program this hour. And there it is, toll-free 877-731-6733. Again, it's toll-free 877-731-6733. It's a pleasure to welcome Darren Blank from the Andersons to RFD-TV Live. Darren, welcome. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
I guess welcome back. You were here earlier,
an
earlier show. It's good to have you back. But for viewers obviously seeing you for the first time, they may not know about the Andersons. But first, your background. You're from Indiana.
Yes, I'm from Corden, Indiana. Lived there all my life. Small town just outside of Louisville, Kentucky. I've been with the Andersons about 4 years now, but I've been in the low-salt in-furrow starter business for about 21 years now, selling that.
And tell us about the Andersons. You said basically east of the Mississippi. You are growing and expanding.
Growing and expanding. The Andersons been around for over 60 years and very involved in the grain buying and plant nutrient development and producers of fertilizer.
And you spent a lot of time on starter fertilizer, so we're glad that you are here. Let's talk about that a little bit and some of the things you have, the Andersons, and how they work AVAIL into your product line. Lots of success story there.
A lot of success with the AVAIL and the Andersons products, and the one product that I work with specifically is an in-furrow row starter, and it's labeled Season Pass or branded Season Pass. It's a 6-18-6 analysis. It is a seed-safe product. It has some sulfur and some zinc in it, but really most importantly, it has the AVAIL in there. And in the past 20 years, I've worked with a lot of different additives, a lot of different enhancers, and quite honestly, the AVAIL has been the most consistent product I've seen work.
How so?
Consistently in yields. We'll consistently see an increase from our starter, but more of an increase where we add the AVAIL.
And you have some data as well as Dave and Larry have had, but you also from the Andersons, some people that have helped you out with some tests.
Yes, we do. This first example here is from Daylight Farm Supply down in Evansville, Indiana. They're a large independent, and this actually represents 4 replications. The red bar is the untreated check. The blue bar is from a starter, in-furrow low-salt starter without AVAIL, and the green bar is with the addition of AVAIL. And Mark, traditionally we'll see this stair-stepping in there, and we don't every year see a 20 and 30 bushel increase, but it's awful exciting. You crow when you can whenever you get that.
I guess.
But consistently we'll see that AVAIL enhancing that starter uptake, and everything was really against a starter, if you will, in this test. It was planted in late May. We had conventional till versus no-till. The soils were warm, high fertility in the soil, so really a starter shouldn't have helped us much. But obviously the Season Pass with AVAIL has really enhanced the yield.
Now, this is showing Evansville, Indiana. By the way, one of our cameramen back there are interested to hear about Evansville, close to his home, so we've been another Hoosier back there. But 2008 is also important because that's the year you said you introduced Season Pass.
That's correct. That's correct. We're in our going into our 4th season now.
Right. And so we jumped from 2008 to 2010 here. We stay in Indiana, but another great test here, and as it relates to some of the tests that Andersons have been able to show the difference when using AVAIL.
And once again, the same type of results. This is out of our large independent in northern Indiana, Clunet Elevator, and we had an untreated check. with no starter, and then we had the season pass on at 5 gallon per acre. And season pass is typically a 3 to 5 gallon per acre recommendation. 5 gallons is going to give us 10 pounds of available phosphorus to get us through that ear initiation stage. And season pass is strictly a starter to be used in conjunction with a sound fertility program. And it's also a tremendous product on cotton. We'll use a 2 gallon per acre in-furrow as a starter on cotton.
What do you hear most often for these producers that and Dave kind of alluded to it earlier, that don't use starters? They don't know, why should I invest in a starter fertilizer?
Well, it's so many things. We'll hear that it slows us down in the field, as Dave mentioned earlier, and the traditional starter program may slow them down because they went from a 16-row to a 32-row planter. And with this product, we're only putting 5 gallon on. So our goal with this product is that the grower doesn't have to fill up any more than he has to with his seed corn. So every 60 to 100 acres, he has to fill up with season pass. And that's been a huge benefit for us.
Seeing is believing, and we have one more visual that is very visual as it relates to the difference that we see here all season long. Starts early.
Yeah, this is just a picture, and I'm sure anyone that used starter and ran out or forgot to turn it on or just ran a test plot has seen this visual result. And the one thing to remember with a starter like season pass is when you see this visual result, we've done our job. That corn on the upper side of the picture, on the left side, had the season pass on it, and the right side had no starter. And we're going to have the same amount of rainfall, the same amount of sunshine on that entire field. And where we had the starter, we've got a more efficient factory for producing corn. We've got a bigger plant and a bigger root system. It's going to pull in more sunlight, more moisture, and more nutrients.
That is great. Again, seeing is believing, viewers, and there it is from the Andersons and Season Pass. Let's give you that telephone number again. Lines are open. We'd love to hear from you. Perhaps a question from your operation as you make final plans for the growing season. There it is, toll-free, 877-731-6733. That's again toll-free. Lines open now. Love to hear from you and join us here with our friends from SFP. Larry, as we listen to Darren there at great association, one of many, but it has to make you feel good when a company like the Andersons that have been so successful now using AVAIL in Season Pass and the success that they've had.
Well, you know, Mark, they did a lot of work starting off with just phosphorus compounds, dries and liquids. And then they moved in and they branded this Season Pass. And they've done a great job. I mean, they sell this product from the East Coast all the way back to the middle part of the United States. I mean, it's a tremendous product that brings great value to the Andersons.
Right. And back to you, Darren, about a producer watching and maybe they haven't used or they may be on and off again using starter. Would you say just jump right in on all your acres here this spring? Why wait?
Oh, no. Well, yes, I would. But,
okay. Just testing you.
I'd welcome a test. Year in and year out, a good quality in-furrow starter is going to pay. And you want to use something that's seed safe. You want to use something that's going to not harm your $400 bag corn. You're putting some very expensive kernels in the ground there, and you want to protect it. So make sure that you've got a good seed-safe product and make sure there's some AVAIL in there.
Larry, you always, and when we talk about in our meetings, you know, the different soil types, and we talked about the warm or the cool, wet soils. Weather certainly is a factor all season long. If that plant doesn't get a good start, it's never going to catch up and reach the potential that that is inbred in the seed company.
Well, you're absolutely right, Mark. I mean, if you let that plant sit there for 2 weeks and be stunted and not grow until it gets warmed up in the soil, then you've lost 2 weeks of growing potential. If you put some phosphate down with AVAIL in it, get that plant growing, then you've got 2 weeks of extra growth there, extra yield potential because you've got that extra phosphate in the plant. And by the time that plant gets to the 5 or 6 leaf stage, the yield potential is already made. I mean, so it's already, you know, on the cob, it's already got the number of kernels set and everything. So it's very important to have that early fertility there. Make sure that that phosphorus gets into the plant so it can initialize that plant and make sure that that yield is with you.
Very good. All right, let's go to the telephones. We do have a caller on the line who's taking us up on the offer. We are glad he did, and we welcome you to give us a call as well. Andy from Pennsylvania, you're up first. Welcome to RFD-TV.
Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. How are you doing?
We're just fine. Thanks for the call. How can we help you?
I was wondering, does the AVAIL release the the phosphorus that's tied up in the soil. We're dealing with extremely high phosphorus levels here with poultry manure that we're using. We're dealing with 300 and 400 part per million on a lot of our soils, and we're not applying any phosphorus with the planter. We're putting just straight 30% down 2 by 2 off the row, and I was wondering, does the AVAIL release the phosphorus that's tied up in the soil, or is it just keeping what you're putting on in solution?
Yeah, Andy, what happens is the AVAIL is protecting the phosphorus that you put down every year. So when we first started this company, we looked at trying to break those bonds in the soil with the soil phosphorus. It's almost impossible to do. They're so strong that you can't break them. But the AVAIL does protect the phosphorus that you put down every year. On high phosphorus soils, maybe you just want to go with a row fertilizer that, that 3 to 5 gallons that really gives you that extra pop early, because a lot of times in cold, wet soils, even though you have high pH soils that you're working with, that's not available to those plants early in the growing season because the roots are not growing fast enough to make enough contact with that soil phosphorus. And then the organic matter that contains a lot of the phosphorus in that soil is not turning over. The microbes aren't working fast enough to really produce enough phosphate out of that organic matter. So maybe 3 gallons will give you a great pop on your early season corn.
Dave, yeah, anything to add there?
Well, I understand you to say that you are using nitrogen in a 2-by. There's a couple options for you there, Andy. You could go ahead and put some phosphate in with that nitrogen solution and treat it with AVAIL. And we'd like to talk to you about putting some Nutrisphere in with that nitrogen to make a combo mix. But I think what you'll find, you've got a great reserve of phosphate in that soil, but you're needing it early. And that manure base phosphorus isn't going to really come a lot of it available till that soil gets warmed up to about 60 degrees. So you're needing early phosphate. It's probably the best thing you could do is to put a little phos with AVAIL on, and the season pass product would be a nice one for you, just to get that corn out of the ground. And I think you would see a huge difference.
All right, thanks for the call. We're going to get to a caller from Texas, but again, want to give you the telephone number if you're just joining us. And again, folks from SFP really want to be of help to you as you make final plans for this growing season with the economics as they are. I'll tell you what, extra 15 bushels or more an acre at these prices are really going to make a difference. The bank's going to be happy as well, aren't they, Larry?
Yes,
but here's that toll-free number is 877-731-6733. That's toll-free number, and the lines are open now. We'd love to hear from you, as we have from Stafford from Texas. Thank you for calling.
Hello, sir.
Good evening.
Yes, sir. I got a 2-part question here.
All right.
But I want to push you off of corn to Bermuda grass, the Tifton 85 in the coast of Bermuda. Is there a benefit for me using AVAIL there? And what about a starter fertilizer? And then when would be a good time to put it out?
Well, Stafford, your Bermuda grass is going to respond to phosphorus just like it does to nitrogen and potassium. So anytime you can increase the availability of that phosphorus and get it in the plant, then you're going to get some good yield increases from it. And that's what AVAIL does. It protects that phosphorus so that it gets in the plant. And on those Bermuda grass systems, it would work great for you. We've got some, if you'll go online at SFP.com, we've got Bermuda grass data from Texas at the Overton station, so you can take a look at that online.
All right. We have Lloyd from New York as our next caller. Lloyd, thank you for calling.
Well, thank you. My question is on the starter fertilizer through the Anderson Company. We have a no-till setup on a Kinsey planter, and we're looking to put a pop-up unit on it. So we're very interested in what you're going over tonight. And we're wondering what the cost would be, say, if we ran 5 gallons of that 6-18-6 through our planter.
All right, Brian, here's one of your...
On the cost per acre. Lloyd, the cost per acre, I guess, is really going to depend a little bit on the logistics there, too. I would say it's going to be anywhere from $28 to $32 an acre, but that's going to be a ballpark guess, and we'd have to get with your local dealer really to get the pinpointed price on that.
And we haven't talked specifically about no-till, Dave, and there's a lot of no-till. You're part of the country as well, and Brian, you run into that as well. Anything to add to other producers out there that might not be able to get through, but have a no-till type question?
Well, no-till, obviously, you don't have the warmth of the soil from tillage to benefit you. So you got that trash kind of keeping that soil cold. And, you know, this is where we really see the AVAIL having a tremendous fit, Mark, is getting that no-tiller, getting his crop off to the best start possible, and having that phosphate available early in that high trash situation, colder soils. It's a tremendous benefit. Stand establishment for a no-till farmer. I've been one myself for 20-some years. That's the most difficult part of a no-till farmer's job, is to get the stand established. This is a great tool.
All right, very good. Thank you for the input there. I'm going to go to Illinois, our next call. Roger, you're up next. Welcome to RFD-TV Live.
Yeah, thank you. My question is, in regards to putting on AVAIL in the mixer on dry, my dealer is complaining about gumming on the phosphate. Well, he's wanting to put it on the potash and then let the phosphate wipe it off of the potash. And we've done that this last year, and I just didn't know if that was the proper method, or should he be tooling up better to apply it to the phosphate direct?
Well, Roger, we have to put that AVAIL directly on that phosphorus, and if he's complaining about it gumming up, we would like to talk to him about pre-treating that phosphate before he puts it into that mixer. There's many new systems that have been developed, a lot of them through our work with the retailers. We have an application specialist by the name of Brian French on our staff who'd be more than happy to stop by your retailer and help him design the right mechanism in his operation to apply this product properly. You should not be experiencing that, but it does have to be applied directly to that phosphate and not the potash. You won't get near the desired result if you don't put it directly on the phosphate.
All right, callers are coming in. Let's give you that telephone number. We're going to take our final break here and come back and talk to our friends from SFP. Toll free is 877-731-6733. I understand a couple of lines are open. Don't want to wait till the last minute. We want to make sure we hear from you. And we're going to go to Indiana after we come back. Take our last break. You're watching RFD-TV Live, rural America's most important network. Welcome back to RFD-TV Live with SFP. I'm Mark Oppold as we head down the home stretch here of this hour. It's been a great hour as we look forward to the 2011 growing season. Been a great 2010. We hope that 2011 is even better for you, and it will be, we think, with the starter fertilizer program that includes AVAIL. That's been our topic and spotlight here this evening. We've enjoyed getting your telephone calls. Helps all of us with your questions, and others that are watching the show as well. Go right back to the telephones to Joseph from Louisiana. Joseph, thanks for hanging on through the break there. Welcome.
How you doing, man?
We're doing fine, thank you.
I'm just catching the tail end of the program. I've actually been working on the planter, getting the pop-up rig set up on it. So I put
There's a man after our own heart, isn't it?
Oh,
well,
yeah.
That's great. Your question then. We'd be glad to help you.
All right. Let me tell you, the corn's kind of making a comeback down on the bottom end of the delta down here for rotation reasons. People have got away from it over the years. And, you know, you get into these big prices, and we can make some big yields here if the weather's right. Just looking for a little something to boost yield all the time. Was actually talking to the dealer earlier, and we use a basic practice of 1137-0 as a pop-up. And we've tried some other things before with tank mixes and had trouble with it gumming and clavering up. Just was wondering if AVAIL goes in a liquid 1137-0 and if it could be put out in the same practice and added to what we're doing.
All right, thanks for the call. Have a great growing season. How can we help, Joseph?
Yeah, that's a great question, Joseph. You can add AVAIL directly to the 1137-0. You use a rate on the liquid AVAIL now. You use the liquid AVAIL. And it's half gallon per 100 gallons. And it's very compatible. You won't get any gumming up or anything like that. So it's going to be a good combination for you. And I can't wait for you to see the results.
All right, let's go to Michigan. Our next call. Jerry, thank you for calling, and you're up next.
Hi there, guys. I want to ask this question of Darren. We've been using Seasons Pass for about 3 years now. 3 years ago, we had a very, very cold spring in Michigan, and boy, it made a whale of a difference. Most of the corn turned purple around here, other than the corn that had Seasons Pass. I understand you have a new one out with a good application of zinc in it. Can you speak to us about that? Because most of the guys now are going to zinc in the row close on the starter fertilizer.
Okay, yes, Jerry, our regular Season Pass has got a 0.05% zinc in it, which is a small amount of zinc. It's definitely beneficial if you're not using any zinc, but the Season Pass Plus is loaded with zinc. It's I believe it's a 0.47 zinc, but at a 5-gallon rate, we're getting a quart of zinc per acre. So we're getting a maximum amount of zinc in there per acre. And I would definitely recommend the Season Pass Plus. It's just our regular Season Pass. It's easier to add more zinc than it is to take it out. So the Season Pass Plus would have a quart per acre at a 5-gallon rate.
And if you are just joining us, we know many of you are getting ready, those of you in the South especially, for the growing season. Darren Blank joining us from the Andersons. So if you, again, joining us, and starter fertilizer is something that is very near and dear to him. So we appreciate, Darren, you being here this evening to join us. Let's see what's on the mind of Randy here from Tennessee. Randy, thank you for calling.
Yes, thank you, too. If we put down a starter fertilizer, liquid, but we use a lot of chicken litter. Does that have any benefit to getting the phosphorus out of the chicken litter?
Well, Randy, this particular product will not be something you want to use with your chicken litter. Just for commercial fertilizers, either liquid or dry commercial fertilizers. But there is a product that we are in development on right now. It's called MTM, or More Than Manure, and it's used with manures, either chicken manure, hog manure, dairy manures, whatever. And it does some of the same things that we see with AVAIL and with NutriSphere. So those products will be coming out in the next year or two, and they'll give you some real opportunities to take advantage of those nutrients that you're losing in manure, just like you're losing in your commercial fertilizers.
But in the meantime, that starter fertilizer program with AVAIL is going to get you a bigger plant, Randy, and it is going to allow you to go out there and grab a little bit more of that available nutrient from that manure as that crop emerges and grows. So yes, putting AVAIL in your starter where you're using chicken litter is going to be an advantage to you.
All right, from Tennessee, we go to Missouri. Jim, thank you for calling. Your question.
Good evening. Enjoying your show.
Thank you.
Can the AVAIL be used for equally good results in other crops other than corn, such as beans and cotton? And thank you.
All right, thank you.
Well, Jim, AVAIL is used with phosphates. Phosphates are essential for all crops. All soils tie up phosphate to some degree. So AVAIL works no matter what soil you're on. It's going to provide more of that phosphate that you spend a lot of money on to get it into the crop. So that's what AVAIL does. And whether you're growing peanuts or whether you're growing alfalfa or whatever crop, the AVAIL is going to work for you just like it does on corn.
What about the being, someone had mentioned in another call, I couldn't hang on, is AVAIL seed safe?
Well, the AVAIL itself, yeah, it's seed safe. There's no problems with the AVAIL. Now, some of the fertilizers that you may use AVAIL with may not be seed safe, so you need to look out for materials that contain DAP, materials that contain urea, anything that has an ammonium or ammonia type release or a salt index could cause you some problems. But the AVAIL itself is seed safe.
What about high nitrogen? That's another question that we've had here. High nitrogen starters. Any thoughts, Dave or Larry or Darren?
This is becoming a much more popular trend. The no-till group is really pushing this one, and a lot of the high yield growers are realizing that we need a little more nitrogen closer to that seed at planting time. So we can't do like Larry said, we can't apply that directly to the seed, but we can go out in a 2x2, which is what a lot of the researchers have done in these high yield corn situations. So we're putting a 50-50 blend of like 10-34-0 and 28 or 32%, 2 inches to the side, and usually maybe 10 gallons of UAN, 10 gallons of 10-34-0, This is a great opportunity to use AVAIL on the phosphorus portion of it and the Nutrisphere end product on the nitrogen portion. You put the two together and they work very well together. We call it stacking, and our research shows that you can actually get even higher yields than just what the AVAIL or Nutrisphere do singly.
Very good. Want to get as many of these callers in as we can. They have stacking up back there. Let's see if we can get to as many here. Louis from Indiana, you're up next. Thank you for calling.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
wondering if I put 200 pound of 1034O 2x2, how much AVAIL I'd have to put on it with that.
200 pounds of dry material is going to...
No, liquid.
Oh, liquid material. Okay, so that would be 200 pounds. How many gallons?
20 gallons, be close to 18 to 20 gallons.
Well, still, Louis, it's going to be a half gallon for every 100 gallons is the way you mix the AVAIL.
Is that, he's gone, but that hopefully answers his question.
Yeah, it's a volume measurement, so no matter what rate of fertilizer you're putting on per acre, you're going to mix your wagon that you're charging your planter with at a rate of 2 quarts per 100 gallons.
All right.
So it's 5 gallons per 1,000.
Oklahoma is our next stop on RFD-TV Live. Mike, welcome.
Yeah, thank you folks for having me. My question is, I'm currently using the SFP product, and I'm an alfalfa producer. And I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on that. And I'm using a dry fertilizer, 9-23-31 is what it is. So if you could elaborate on that, I'd appreciate it.
Thanks for the call, Mike.
Well, Mike, with your 9-23-31, I believe is what you said, you can coat that with AVAIL just like you do any phosphate fertilizer. And, of course, you're going to be coating some nitrogen, you're going to be coating some potash, but still you're going to protect that phosphate when it goes out on that alfalfa. It's going to give you a lot better results, and you'll be able to see it on your alfalfa growth.
How about quality increases as it relates to in the quantity question, Dave?
Yeah, when we're talking about alfalfa, we've had some amazing results on alfalfa, and if he's using a 9-23-31, that's a cold blend, so he can just treat the phosphorus portion of that with the AVAIL. It's going to cost him about 12.5 cents a unit, and that's going to be pretty reasonable. Our results have been anywhere from a half ton to 2 ton extra alfalfa per acre just by treating the phosphorus portion with the AVAIL. And the TDN, we've had a couple percent points higher in a lot of university studies, Larry. It's been very exciting. What alfalfa, you get every bit of that fertilizer, so it's fun.
Just a couple of minutes before we need to start wrapping things up, so let's go back to Michigan. Brian has called us, and we are glad you did, Brian. Thanks for calling. Your question now.
Yeah, I'm an organic grower, but I'm going back to conventional fertilizer and conventional growing this year. And what I wanted to know, is there anything in the AVAIL product that is detrimental to the soil's natural biology of the soil and the fertility of the soil? Like it must be some type of a chemical or something that breaks down the phosphorus. But so that is my question.
All right.
Well, Brian, AVAIL is made from carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. There's nothing else in there, and when it decomposes by soil microorganisms, and it goes right back into carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So there are no toxins, no effects to the soil. We don't kill any bacteria, so it's a very safe material, very ecology-friendly material. Leaves no footprint.
And you mentioned, you kind of touched on environmentally, the steps that SFP goes through each and every year, and those steps maybe get a little bigger, a little deeper, perhaps, if you want to put it that way, but obviously very important to the company.
Absolutely. You know, we want to make sure our products work, and they not only work, but they also protect the environment and make sure that farmers like Brian that are using organics, that they get the kind of value out of it they're looking for too.
Now, farmers, like anyone else, are always looking for something new each and every year, and we do have something to share as we kind of start to close things out here, Larry.
We do.
What's new at SFP?
We do have something new. And you know, we've been working on the quick dry material for the last year or so with the Nutrisphere N. Now that's for nitrogen. And we also have a colorant in that material. And I don't know if you can see this, but it's orange colored. So it really makes a pretty product. It turns your urea orange. You can see the Nutrisphere N on there. Provides you with a really nice looking blend if you're going to blend it with other materials. And it's kind of a showy product.
And that is available?
It's available. And when it comes out of the blender, it's dry as a bone. So I heard one farmer talking about a little bit of tackiness.
A little tackiness, yeah.
Yeah, this material right here is going to be super dry.
Very good. Well, all right. So there you go, producers. Always something new, and we have it right here for you on RFD-TV. It's time for us to start to wrap things up and give each of you a chance to have some final thoughts. Darren, great to have you with us from the Andersons, Darren Blank. And starter fertilizer is what you love to talk about. We really appreciate your input, but your closing thoughts for viewers you'd like to leave with them.
Well, I'd like to encourage every one of you to look at your fertility needs and consider a starter. Consider a starter in furrow. And remember that we're trying to get that corn out of the ground in a uniform emergence, try to get every kernel out within a 24 to 36 hour period, and feed that plant and get it through that 5th leaf stage when that yield's being determined. And we've really done our job after that, getting that 10 pounds of phosphorus under the seed.
Again, great to have you with us, Darren. Hopefully you have a profitable 2011, and we hope you'll come back and see us.
Thank you.
All right. Dave, always good to see you from the Hawkeye State. Your closing thoughts here from as National Products Manager, SFP.
Well, Mark, corn is over $6 a bushel. Looks like it's going to stay at that level or could be potentially higher. We're looking at an initial investment on starter fertilizer around $4.75 an acre to treat 5 gallons of starter with AVAIL. I can't think of a better way to spend $4.75 on your 2011 corn crop than to put some AVAIL and capitalize on getting this efficiency that we talk about here tonight. And our averages have been 4 to 1 to 5 to 1 return on investment. And when you're talking the kind of bushel price, I think you'll agree after you try it.
Absolutely. And Larry, we want to get your closing comments as well, but before we do that, we want to make sure that we remind our viewers that there is a webinar following this broadcast, and again, that's going to take place in about 5 minutes after our show is completed. Just go to www.sfp.com, as you see there, and you can look for the RFD-TV promotional banner, click on that banner, and follow the directions to the webinar. Again, it'll start in about 5 minutes after the completion of our show, and we invite you to tune in there and learn more and ask questions if we didn't get them answered here during our hour. But Larry, always good to see you and the folks at SFP and new product here this year. But your closing thoughts as we leave this evening.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mark. You know, it's important that farmers know that corn prices, like Dave said, have gone up, but fertilizer prices have gone up too. Phosphorus is now 75 cents a pound or a little bit more. And losing 75 to 95% of that due to fixation is unacceptable. The AVAIL overcomes that fixation or that tie-up, leaves that fertilizer available for the plant, increases your yields, adds to your bottom line, and environmentally, it just leaves no footprint. So AVAIL is a great product that farmers, if they don't know about it, they should learn about it. They can call SFP, they can go online to sfp.com, and they can look at all of our databases. It's all there for you to look at, every test that we've ever run, and it just gives you a huge step up.
All right, good to see you again, Larry, as always. Again, we invite you to tune in this Thursday evening, 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central Time, for a special broadcast from the recent No-Till Conference brought to you by SFP. I'm Mark Oppold. Good night from RFD-TV.